Welcome to the Dragonfly Rising podcast. I am your host, Dr. Tami Dean. Thank you for joining me today as we continue to work together to make a difference. Let's explore how we can use our voice today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the newest episode of the Dragonfly Rising podcast. It's me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean, back with our amazing guests, Dr. Kevin Taylor and Dr. Bre Evans-Santiago from the CTEP Center at CSU. They're back to share some more details and in-depth information about their center and how it works to disrupt systemic oppression and promote social justice and equity. So really excited to get back to learning more from them about the programs and opportunities they have. So let's dive right back in.
So we have this Equity and Excellence Certificate Program. And with that Equity and Excellence Certificate Program, we have sponsored, and now we're going to offer it later down the road for free, where we have these asynchronous courses that are facilitated by someone within the CSU that is within this work, within the center, that helps us understand first the foundation of education, the structural racism, where are we, what has been, and where can we go? So just the foundation of specific words like being biased, what are marginalized, like making sure that we're all on the same page.
Right.
If we're going to be a CSU as a whole, we need to get these words and we need to understand where we're coming from. And so, historical timelines and vocabulary, what have you. Then it moves into personal connections and really taking the time to, so course 2 is more of like understanding self and thinking about my journey and where can I go? What do I believe? And then thereafter, the last course is taking action. So it's like, now that you understand the foundations, now that you have critically looked within, now do something about it. So within your sphere of influence, whoever you are, faculty, staff, administration, students, whoever you are and wherever you are, what can you do right now? And then do it, and then come back and share the data as to what happened. So it could be a staff member that said, I started putting welcoming posters or language, or I added something to my signature line. We're not asking for miracles. We're asking for steps. We're asking for movement, right? And so that's that certificate program. And so that's been pretty, I think, powerful as to how people are coming about and saying, I never even thought of myself as this, or I didn't know that I can make a change in where I worked because I am just the da-da-da. But it's like, no, you're a lead. You're someone where you are, you can make impact. And so I think that's been really powerful. And so we have that. And then we also have this coaching. We have coaching that goes on through improvement science. And so we work with each of the teams that have been selected, the 10 teams, and they go through their own goals for their campuses. How are they going to transform? What do they need? And that's been powerful as well. And then what else? Throughout all of that, they end up creating change packages. Change packages are, if you wanted to make this change, here's what it can look like. This is what we did. And here it is in a nice little package for you where you can take that and use that where you are, revise it, what have you, to match your needs. But overall, this is like what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we have these different elements of that.
Yeah. So I want to come back, right? Because people hear, disrupt systemic oppression. And they're like, whoa, I can't do that. These systems and structures have been in place for a long time, right? Which is true. But then, so this is where I like to use the and, right? Yes. Systemic oppression and systems have been in place. And you have the opportunity to use your person and your voice and your interactions and vision with others to make a change, to influence that, right? And so I hear you saying your center helps support, right, people with, this sounds huge and big, right? But how do I take it down to actionable pieces, right? So when you hear like socially just practices, like when people come to you, is that like, what do they think that means? And what does it really mean? Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how do y'all like kind of address that? I would love to hear that because, we tend to sometimes as educators or as humans think like, I do this thing, now I'm X,
Mhm.
versus this is a journey.
Yes.
So
And
I would love,
the
yeah.
journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think is very different for different people. Uh, uh, for myself, with the many layers of privilege that I have coming to an education space, I'm in a very different place, have a very different background to everybody else at that. So it's going to be different for different people. But as Bre was talking about, getting people to take that first step, make a small change. I can disrupt systems of inequity by putting my hand up at a meeting and saying, well, speaking as a feminist, and actually giving voice to the fact that as a privileged white male, I'm going to self-identify as a feminist. I didn't think anything about doing that the first time I did it. And then at the end of the class or the meeting or wherever it was, people left and right would come and say, wow, you're a feminist? I'm like, of course I'm a feminist. How could you call yourself an educator and not be a feminist? For goodness sakes, I was pissed off about it. But so sometimes you can change systems of inequity just it can begin with small actions. And over time, as you reinforce for that and you realize, wow, yeah, this is really important, then the change gets bigger. You take on more things. It's adding new teaching tools to your bag and refining your craft as an educator to bring more and more in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an example of that is, so we have the third prong is networking, like sharing and networking. So we had this convening, and one of the campuses actually was talking about looking into why are teachers of color not finishing? Like,
Oh.
why are they not complete? They get in, but they're not complete. What's happening? Well, they found out that oftentimes they would stop going or they were dismissed from the program. Why? What's happening? Oh, well, it looks like there's A, B, and C that didn't happen. So they started digging in and figuring out what was happening. And from that, they changed the processes within that campus to say, hey, in our program, let's try this. For now on, when you see a student with, dispositions that you don't agree with, or maybe they're not coming through like they should or what have you, let's do an improvement plan. Let's check on them and let's make sure these improvement plans are getting done. So that way there's intervention and goal setting instead of saying go because you didn't do what you were supposed to do, right? Changing that institutional mindset. And because of that, this campus has already increased their completion rates and they have more students of color enrolling and being a part of their system. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and they saw an increase of improvement plans and a decrease of dropout. Like you're seeing the data. So this center has taken the time to support this team with digging into the data, making these goals, making these changes. And now the program, actually more than one program, 3 programs have been scaled out to continue to do this work. And so a simple thing, right? But it's going to make huge change because we took the time to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's just one small example.
Yeah. Someone asked the question and then, so it takes that person, right? Like we're back to this, right? Ask the question. Why?
Yeah.
Is anybody wondering why these teachers are leaving? And we want them to stay, right? So what are we going to do differently? Something isn't working, right? It's kind of like, I think of it this way. You're teaching a class and no one's doing well, right? Everyone failed the test or didn't do well the test. It isn't the student. Newsflash, y'all. It's not the students. It's you. There's a misalignment between communication and expectation and outcome. So how do you dig in? How do you change? How do you adjust? But you have to be open, right? To the question and and you have to be willing to ask it.
Yeah.
Right.
And even within our website, the questions are there. So we've developed questions that people have asked or that we hear. And if you have the question, then you click on that link, boom, and there's a change package to help you figure out how to work through that problem, if that makes sense. So it's like,
Yeah.
if there's a question where it's like, why are, like you said, why are students dropping out? Or, how can I recruit more? Da, 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 da. And if someone from our teams has started to work on that and they've created something that we can use, resources, then we're able to provide those for others to look into later, if that makes sense. So that,
Oh, yeah.
we're trying to help answer those questions or not. We're not the end all be all, but if you're sitting here with the question, we want to help with something if we can. That's the point of this center, is to provide resources and the support and to work through it, and network to be able to continue to move. Push that needle.
Yeah. So I have a wondering. Okay. Because I don't even know if you know this. So when I was doing my dissertation research, it was focused on following pre-service teachers. So you all work with pre-service teachers, and they had the opportunity to engage with socially just practice and education. And I was curious what happened when they left and were like going into student teaching, right? And they all experienced a lot of challenges and barriers to implementing and integrating, right? Some of the socially just educational practices they had learned, because there's a misalignment between what was happening in their college classes and then what would happen when they go student teaching. So I'm curious, are you like, how is that all this great work you're doing, right? And you're preparing and connecting them. How are you seeing that trickle effect into the schools? Like, are these students becoming advocates when they go out in their practicum and student teaching? Are districts and schools like, hey, what are y'all doing over there? Working your magic in the CSU system. Tell us about this. Come help support us. So what is that looking like?
Initially, it looks like really focusing on their embedded experience. We have within CTEP, we have the key transformational elements, KTEs, that we focus on that really reflect best practice in teacher ed. So building university school district partnerships, okay? Training teachers who are going to endure in the profession takes a community. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to raise a teacher. And you've got to connect those teacher prep programs with the school districts and with the community. And it can't just be important to the teacher prep programs that our candidates get into the profession and stay there. It has to be important to the districts as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And so within the center, some of our programs are looking at that relationship and working with human resources at a school district to ensure that they are supporting candidates that are coming from Black, Indigenous populations, brown skin, black skin, making sure that they are celebrated, supported, nurtured within the school district, because we can do a fabulous job in teacher prep. But if we turn them into schools that are still anchored in a white supremacist culture, that's going to be hard work for them to stay there.
Yeah.
We have to give them support. So the KTEs, these key transformation elements, look at building partnerships with school districts, identifying prioritized skills for educators, and particularly looking at developing skills that help them be well prepared to disrupt systemic oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Designing practice-based teacher preparation programs, so they're learning to teach in the schools, and providing feedback on prioritized skills, and using data to make things better, continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Based on data-driven decision making. So those are elements, and Bre I'm sure can add to that. Those are elements of CTEP where we try to get at that.
Yeah.
And
Power of community. Go ahead, Bre. Sorry, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that it does take the community. And there are times where this has caused our programs and teams to look at who they're partnering with. And so I don't know if you know of one of our campuses, they don't directly work with CTEP, but we support, all teacher ed programs within Cal State system. Cal State Fullerton actually cut off a huge partnership with the school district because of some of their practices and decisions. And so we're getting real, and we're saying, this is what needs to happen. This is what we believe in, and this is what we need to move forward. Now, at the same time, in order for us to know where they are later, that takes, again, networking. So that's part of CTEP. Like, alumni, come back, share. What are you doing? Let's keep in touch. So we have this center, the Education Quality Center within the Chancellor's office, that collects data. And so they are responsible for going out and finding out, are they being employed? How many of our, teacher candidates are continuing to be employed, retention, things like that. And so we're continuing to work on that so we can collect that data. It goes up and down, and it's really hard to find folks, especially in California, because they have a lot of options.
Right.
Go up and down.
Big state.
Yes. And so because of that, we're still in the process of figuring out more accurate and sustainable ways where we can keep up with that and find out where they are and what they're doing. But a big connection now is through residencies. So many of our campuses have residencies. And so they create their cohorts and they stay together, they can, and things like that. And so those have been pretty positive. And those are throughout our Cal State campuses. And so I think that's a start. And so it's continuing to learn from each other. But it's hard once they're out, because if we're not doing it for our job and like following them, then how do we keep up? So through social media, good community connections, continuing to keep up with those districts. So then that way, maybe those pre-service teachers are then our mentor teachers.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, oh, what a powerful opportunity, right? Like you all have built and are building. I'm going to say built and building, right? Because it's ongoing, but this really powerful community of educators that value and seek out this type of opportunity, and like continuing, like in my mind, I'm just like, how amazing would that be to be a mentor to, right? Like a student, like I went through this and I experienced this, and that networking is so powerful. Yeah. Because we are meant to live in community as humans and people, and support each other, right? So that's so exciting. And, bravo to you all. Like, I'm just going to give y'all some kudos, right? Like, because to say and hold the line, right? To hold this boundary of this is who we are. This is what's important. This is what's important for students, for educators, for people, for humanity, right? Like all these things. And this is what we're looking for. These are the experiences that are essential and vital. And if your district isn't doing that, then this isn't a fit for us. This isn't a good match, because this is what we value, right? Because this is what I feel like. I feel like that's how change happens, right? Like kind of like what happened with, I'm taking my students to this one school, right? And they start to see the impact of what you all are doing and the teachers that are coming out of your system, and, how that ultimately, because at least for me personally, like this work to me ultimately comes down to the experience that the students have in their
Mhm.
learning environment, and that it has shifted for them,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
And that's why it is so critical that we address this problem of the lack of diversity in our teacher workforce.
Mhm.
Need we need black and brown teachers. We need indigenous teachers. We need people at the front of the classroom to inspire kids from all backgrounds to be interested in education. We need people at the front of the classroom demonstrating that all kinds of people can be teachers, can be leaders, can take these positions. It hurts everyone not to have diversity represented at the front of the classroom. It can't just exist in the in the student body. It has to exist in the teacher workforce as well.
Absolutely. Representation matters.
It really does.
I mean, it's, and some people think that sounds cliche, but it's absolutely true
It
that
is, in another parallel from my work in social justice with people with disabilities, including kids with disabilities is important, not just for kids with disabilities, it's for kids without it's for everybody, because
Mhm.
we all should be exposed so we don't feel threatened by our ignorance. It is so true with other forms uh, uh, of of human difference. We need women and men. We need people with different orientations, different skin color, different cultural backgrounds, different religious beliefs, all represented so that the students get a true education that represents all of humanity.
absolutely. Absolutely. I had a conversation recently, someone was talking about pronouns,
Mhm.
right? And not and understanding the why behind the pronoun, right? Like, even like my pronouns are she, her, hers, but it is important for me to share my pronouns as a cis female because then it's not odd. Like, it's welcoming and inviting, and it is belonging. Everyone belongs, right? And the importance of belonging. And I think what you're saying, Kevin, I think that part gets missed. Like, that why piece sometimes gets missed.
Mhm.
So I want to think about, how have you been seeing? And I'm going to share the link, y'all, to their website because it has 8,000 gajillion resources on it. Like, I don't even think gajillion's a word, but it is in my book today. They have a plethora. That's also one of my favorite words, but a plethora of resources for you. So even if you're not in California, y'all, you should check out this website and look at their resources. What have you all found to be the most compelling thing? Like, what are things that people are going to all the time? They're like, oh my God, I'm so glad you guys have this. Like, what are some things that people can find on your website?
I think the big one is what Kevin was saying, the partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Building the partnerships, because with our work, we want to ensure that it's not just saying, oh, I have a district that I'm going to work with. It's, do they believe in the same mission, vision that you have it as a team or as your campus or program? And is that being shared? Are you all mutually agreeing upon what the outcome for these students will be if they are placed at your site? And so that's been one of the biggest questions, and most people are working on. How do we create that MOU? Like, what should be in there? What,
Mm-hmm.
where are our boundaries? Where's our hard no? What else can we add? Where do we compromise? How do we say this to ensure that they get it, but it's not lost? So, oftentimes when we say social justice, people quiver or think it's something horrible. But then when you define what that is, and people know and understand, oh, okay, it's ensuring that people get, equitable treatment, or to ensure
Mm-hmm.
that people are being socially accepted, and and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not bad. But for some reason, sometimes specific words can turn someone off. So it's like, how do we navigate through that kind of stuff to still ensure that we're getting across our mission and vision, to still ensure that they're going to support the students the way that we would like them to, keeping them, but at the same time also ensuring that we're on the same page. So I think that's a big one, is
Yeah.
the partnerships. I think another one is providing that feedback. So we have various teams that have revised their rubrics or their observation templates and things like that, because they want to ensure that there is more DEI infused, right? That there is discussion of and paying attention to inclusion. And what does that look like in the classroom? And so if I'm observing you, and on my rubric it says A, B, and C, I want to make sure that C also includes a little bit of this, because that's just as important. And so people are starting to revise observational rubrics, or thinking about the way they evaluate their students, supporting the supervisors more and the co-teachers as well, to ensure that they are going in with that lens as well. Because we talk about it a lot as teacher educators, but the supervisors and the co-teachers should also be on the same page.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that comes in with that feedback and that student experience as they're moving, through their programs, their credential programs. So those are that I think have been pretty consistent with wanting support or seeing resources or asking the questions, how do you do it? And what does that look like? And do you have a campus that does A, B, and C? This is, those types of things. So that's what I've seen thus far.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful, right? To have a model and a resource, and to be building that alignment, right? So that there's that consistency there. Because, if you say you value diversity, equity, and inclusion, where are you asking to see that? Where is that expectation for the demonstration of that in your action and interaction with people and others, right? Because you can say, we're working on, and this, we see this a lot, right? Like, we believe in equity and we believe in diversity. Where's the evidence
Microscope
of, where is the evidence of that? What action are you taking around that? And not like lip service action, like actual action around this work. And it comes back to, right, even if it's starting in small ways and you're building to that, and you're like leaning on, how am I getting resources to support and do this? What could this look like? Like, I'm not sure. So I think that's amazing. It is not surprising to me that is some of the biggest, right? Because that right there comes back to me for your mission and vision, right? That is disrupting the systemic oppression that's happening in schools, because those structures, right, on how we evaluate or interpret learning or teaching, right, disrupting those things and changing those to include these components is doing exactly that, right? Because it's providing a different lens and opportunity for that. So this may be hard, because I always have a hard time with this, but I love to kind of always provide like a tip for educators, right? So we've talked a lot about, like, we can take this one next step. So educators that are listening that aren't sure, like, I would love for you each to share some advice. Like, how should they do that? What would be a tip for you? I know, Kevin, you shared a book that kind of inspired you. I feel like there are resources out there that, like, we can utilize. So what is that kind of tip for your educator? Like, what is your one next step? How can they use their voice? What would you want to share with an educator listening?
I would say it's going to change over time, but don't be afraid to challenge yourself and your own assumptions. As an educator, you have to challenge your own assumptions, your own practice. and to keep making progress. One of our sites admitted after sharing their change packet that their change package emphasized the fact that they were actually really bad at doing something, that what they had been trying to do wasn't working.
Mhm.
And they were really worried about that to begin with. But then they realized, and within CTEP, we were celebrating that. This is brilliant.
Yeah.
You know what's not working. You know that what you were doing isn't doing what you wanted it to do. That knowledge is power. So
Yeah.
I would say to all educators, don't be afraid to interrogate your own practices. When you find out you're not very good at something, tell everybody and share that. Be vulnerable, because you're going to find educators who will support you and help you to grow and change. And that fundamentally is what education is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think for me, I would just add for the educators that think that they're there. So we have some that say like,
Uh-huh.
"What? Or I know, or I teach others. I research about, I know this, that it's okay to continue to learn. And even if it's not in your specific practice, for
Mhm.
instance, how Kevin said, oh, well, then I started learning about disability and what that looks like and finding out about disability justice. There's so many intersections that we could explore and build upon our own knowledge. So yes, I am an expert in da da da. I couldn't even say that because I know I'm not an expert in anything. I'm continuously growing and learning. But if some people feel that they are,
Mhm.
I'm an expert in A, but the intersectionalities that connect with A, there's something else there. And so I challenge our educators or teacher educators that have been in the game for a while or know this stuff and are continuing to do the work. And we thank you for that. But at the same time, dig in. There are other perspectives and there are other things that we may not yet know. And it's
Mhm.
okay to continue to learn, even as a seasoned researcher or even as a seasoned, educator. And I think that that's so important because when we start closing those doors and saying that we already get it, then whose voice did we just leave out?
Oh, Bre. Yes. Kevin's giving snaps. I'm just over here nodding. Yes. Yes, because this is a journey, right? Like, I am with you. I say I've been engaging with this type of work for 25 years, and I am still constantly learning and never not going to be, because there's always something new to learn, to see, to understand, to grow, like, and coming back to what we talked about, right? Like, there's so many resources and people doing such amazing work around equity and social justice
Mhm.
that how I just don't know how you can say you're done, because how is it ever done? It's not done because we're not there. Like, not everybody has equality, right? So we're still working on it. So it's not done. So we all need to
Yeah.
keep learning and knowing and doing better and being better and walking the walk along with how we're talking the talk.
Mhm. Mhm.
So oh my gosh, you two both. Like, those are amazing tips for our educators, and those of you listening, I am going to be dropping the link to their website so you can check it out. If you are a teacher, future teacher, check it out. Go if you're from California, like, reach out to these wonderful, amazing people. They're doing great things and great work, and it has just been such an honor to talk with you both today. I appreciate all of your time and energies. Everybody listening, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all the great things. Thank you both for your time and for all the hard work that you're doing.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you.
This wraps up another episode of the Dragonfly Rising podcast with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember that action is always greater than inaction. How will you use your voice today?